Hey guys, it's Scott with Scottie B Cards, and in this video, I want to talk about 3 players that I am high on heading into 2024. So these players, who they are, they're just players I think whose cards could appreciate based off of what's going to happen in the 2024 season. They can be established players, they can be prospects, they can be sleeper picks. It just so happens that every player in this video is more relatively established, but I think something is going to happen to cause their cards to either increase or to be more sought after in some capacity. Please be aware that I'm not saying go buy these players' cards. I'm not saying they're a great investment, all of that. I'm a random talking head on the internet, and these are just the players that I'm currently buying or I think could have potential. So the very first player I want to talk about is Francisco Lindor, and that might surprise you because Lindor's been in the league since 2015. He's only 29 years old, actually heading into his age 30 season now. He's actually 30 right now technically, but he'll be 30, I believe, the entirety of the 2024 MLB season. But overall, there's a lot of things to like about Francisco Lindor. He was a hobby darling from 2015 to 2019. Up until his age 25 season, while he was in Cleveland, people really liked him when he was on the Indians, right? So they collected his cards. You can see over on the right side in awards, you can see MVP top 10 finish in 1, 2, 3 straight seasons. And then in 2019, he was still top 15. And he was a solid player. He looked like he was on a Hall of Fame path. And then he had a rough 2020 comparatively for him with a 104 OPS plus. And then 2021, his first season with the Mets, was not great with a 100 OPS plus. He still maintained elite defense. That's been his saving grace as a Gold Glove winner. He might have won a Platinum Glove. I think he might have. But overall, people really kind of moved on from Francisco Lindor at this point. And then you can see he bounced back really strong the last 2 years with the 125 OPS plus and a 120 OPS plus. OPS plus compares you to league average. This means he was 25% better hitter than league average. That's really good. If you want to be like elite, it's like 140 to 170 is where you want to be, but this is still very good, especially for a defensive shortstop. That's great. One thing I want to point out for his career with wins above replacement, he has 42.7 B WAR and 47.7 F WAR. Some people prefer B WAR, some people prefer F WAR, but for this video, we're talking about F WAR for Lindor because that usually is more accurate for defense, is kind of the assumption. People prefer the defensive metrics for Fangraphs WAR. Usually you don't have this big of a discrepancy between the two, but overall, 47.7 F WAR through his age 29 season sounds like a lot, and that's because it is. For shortstops since the integration era, since like the 1940s, he is third for all shortstops through their age 29 season, only behind A-Rod at 77.7 WAR and Cal Ripken Jr. at 55.2 WAR. Plus, he lost some time in 2020 due to COVID, and because of that, he could even be higher right now. You actually can see he's ahead of Ernie Banks, Robin Yount, Alan Trammell, Derek Jeter, Nomar Garcia-Parra, all these great players. So it just shows that he's able to have that consistent value. On top of that, we're actually going to jump here real quick. You might say, well, that just shows how flawed WAR is. And you can say that, but you can see he's been an above average base runner for his career. He's actually a 30-30 guy last year, which is great. And on top, there's a top 5 defensive shortstop through his age 29 season since the 1940s. And on top of that, a top 10 offensive shortstop. So he's great offensively, he's great defensively, and on top of that, he's okay. He's pretty good on the base paths. All of that leads to a player who has accumulated a lot of advanced metrics, plus he does have some of the traditional metrics, right? A shortstop with an 815 OPS, 215 home runs. He already has 156 stolen bases. There's a real world where he has 300 stolen bases. It's going to be hard, but he could. And on top of that, 400 home runs. So Lindor is a player I think right now, in the moment, people are realizing how good he is, myself included. I collected Lindor for a long time. I kind of moved on from him to buy other players just because that's how you kind of happen in collecting. And now I'm kind of going back to his cards. I have picked up a few of his Bowman Chrome autographs. I have a gold that is purchased, and I think there's potential that card's going to have more value once people realize if he has one more good year. If he has another year like the last two, a 5.5 or 6 WAR season, that'll put him easily for F WAR into the mid 50s or early 50s, and then for B WAR in the top 40s. That'll get people really speculating, wow, he's only 30 years old. So I do want to jump over here. Projections. Here's what Baseball Reference thinks for this next year, and here's what Fangraphs thinks for the next 3 years. If it's true what Fangraphs is saying, that's going to put him like around, 12 to 13 WAR overall for the next 3 years. Seems really low projection-wise, but if that's the case, that puts him in the 60s for F WAR. And you actually can jump forward a little bit more. Here are his percentile rankings. You can see that his arm strength has declined. His sprint speed has increased. I'm guessing because of the emphasis on stolen bases, he was able to have more bursts of speed, which is how it's measured through StatCast. And so that could be why that's the case. But overall, his range is still strong. One of the best defensive players in baseball. And he doesn't do anything like elite besides maybe fielding, but he's still a solid player overall. His platoon splits, maybe those are worrisome. I don't want to talk too heavily about them. You can see he has significantly lower OPS as a left-handed hitter, but significantly more power as a left-handed hitter. And that could simply be just because he has significantly more at-bats against righties versus lefties. But it is what it is there. On top of that, the one thing that actually might be hurting his numbers a little bit, because we saw his rate stats like batting average, OPS, all those things did drop since he went to New York, could be because he doesn't hit well at Citi Field. For his career, he's only a 757 OPS guy at Citi Field, and you can see his road OPS was 864 last year, and his home OPS was 743. So that is something to pay attention to. And we can see in Cleveland, he was an 889 OPS guy, so that has hurt his stats a little bit, but regardless, his whole body of work still looks good. And his cards are kind of cheap. Obviously, hundreds of dollars might not be cheap for a lot of people. Very high pop. You know, he was a very top prospect for years and years and years before everything boomed recently. 494 BGS 9.5 base autographs, only sells for about $170. PSA 10, 101 PSA 10 sells for about $380. And you can see how he's compared to other players. So his Bowman Chrome Gold just went for $1,500, about the same as Royce Lewis, about a third or a fourth of Anthony Volpe, pretty close to Trey Turner, less than Tim Lincecum. You know, Chris Bryant is $900, Lindor at $1,500, seems like a decent deal. Even Adley Rutschman is at $2,000, while Lindor is at $1,500. So a potential Hall of Fame shortstop, seems like there is a buying opportunity, especially if he has one or two more good years. People may come around on him. So that's my first player. The next player is Fernando Tatis Jr. And I'm not buying his cards just because I'm more of a purist than I probably should be. And there's only so much money you can throw around everywhere, and the steroid suspension does bother me. But I think in the short run, people will not care. Right? I don't think the steroid stuff is going to be a huge deal while he's still playing, as long as he doesn't have another steroid suspension. We can see when he was fully healthy, he had 42 home runs that led the league, 166 OPS plus, 156, 154. He's had amazing offensive seasons. OPS isn't always in the high nines. If we look at his offensive WAR, you can see he was always doing great. Always struggled defensively at shortstop, and they moved him to right field. I felt like he was going to do horrible in right field, and he became a Platinum Glove winner and was amazing defensively. This last year, he was not good offensively. He was good. He was 25 home runs, 29 stolen bases. So a 25-25 guy, which is good, but it wasn't who he was prior. Maybe that's because of the steroid stuff, or maybe it's just because he was not as comfortable at the plate due to the fact he was getting booed all the time. All that stuff could be a factor. But a 113 OPS plus, but still had 5.5 WAR, and that's because of how good his defense is. So here is his defense over here. You'll see right here his batting value and his base running value in 2021 was basically top 5 percentile in all of baseball, while his defense was slightly below average. Look at 2023, now he's top 5 percentile in defense, and his base running and batting average is now slightly below average or right at average. I think he has a higher ceiling than almost any other player in baseball. I'm not saying he's going to win MVP or anything like that, but I do think that there's a real world where he has an 8-WAR season one of these years, especially this newfound defense. And if that happens, people may overlook the steroid suspension for at least the short term, and there could be a selling opportunity. But that's what I'm speculating on, is just the fact that his biggest weakness is now his biggest strength, and I don't think that all of his offensive production was due to steroids. So that's my next player, is Fernando Tatis Jr. Here are just some interesting stats. We're not going to look at those too much right now. Here he is compared to Juan Soto, Ronald Acuna Jr., and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Tatis is probably really small, is green, Soto is blue, Acuna is purple, and Vlad is red. And you can see Tatis is slightly more valuable than Guerrero, but I think that's probably deserved at this point with how Guerrero played last year. About half of who Soto and Acuna are value-wise. So it just goes to show, if you think that he can make up that difference to get back into the Soto-Acuna range, maybe it's an opportunity. If you think he's priced correctly at $2,500 for a blue Bowman Chrome autograph BGS 9.5, then don't touch his cards. But either way, people like Tatis. He's pretty exciting, and all that can lead to hype. And hype is one of the driving factors in sports cards, and that's important. So that is my second player, Tatis, and my third player is going to be Juan Soto. And again, I know you're going to say, like, wow, those are really bold picks that you made. I think in some ways they are bold, because I'm saying that I think that he's going to have a season sufficiently enough to make the justification of me buying his cards worth it. And I have bought some Juan Soto this offseason, and the boat may have already left, right, by the time this video comes out, because his cards have gone up a ton since spring training started. And I made this presentation about a month ago, but I haven't recorded it till after spring training started. But either way, with Juan Soto, one thing I want to show is San Diego ballpark killed him. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but he went from playing in the NL East to the NL West, and the NL West has some of the most pitcher-friendly ballparks in all Major League Baseball, and he actually was horrible at Petco Park, and all of that led to some numbers that were disappointing. But even with those disappointing numbers, this last year he had a 158 OPS plus with 5.5 WAR, and on top of that, he had his all-time high in home runs at 35, second highest RBI total with 109, led the league in walks still the last 2 years, which is great for on-base percentage. People prefer that more than batting average at times. I still see value in batting average. But I think we haven't seen prime Soto yet. And I want to show you just compared to where other players are through their age 24 season. Again, he's 24. That's younger than Adley Rutschman. That's younger than so many superstars that people feel are rookies and young. Soto's younger than them. And he already has, 29 WAR through his age 24 season. But here he is next to Bryce Harper. Mookie Betts is purple. Harper is black. Soto is orange. Then we have blue is Acuna and green is Aaron Judge. Just to give you reference of how high he is currently in this moment, he's at all of them. And I think there is a real world where he has his best season this year. And I know that sounds dramatic, but let me explain why in just a moment. So let's look at his splits. He's always been a slow starter. That is why his cards always have this build up in the offseason and drop at the beginning of the season. Almost every single year we've seen that with his cards. But one of my conditions of his cards going up is if he can just start out average, right? If he has a 900 OPS, and that's average for him, right? If he can do that and have a 270 batting average, his cards are going to maintain, and then usually kicks off later in the summer and has his bigger parts of the year. One thing I also want to point out are his home and away splits from last year at Petco. You can see he had a 827 OPS at home with a 240 batting average and 12 home runs. That's not that good. But on the road, we can see he had a 307 batting average with a 1.026 OPS with 23 home runs on the road. So basically, he was a 46 home run hitter and 130 RBI on the road with a 307 batting average if he didn't play his home games at Petco. I actually want to show you his totals for every game ever played at a ballpark. So we can see Petco, he has 113 games played with a 783 OPS, just for reference about how bad he's done there with a 230 batting average. That's really killed him. If you compare that to his other home ballpark, which was Nationals Park, he was a 296 hitter with a 968 OPS. And it's not abnormal for players just not to hit well at certain parks, whether they can't pick it up or whether they just can't fit to the dimensions for home run and power. All of that can be very difficult for specific players. And so that is what's killed his numbers, and that's what's killed his momentum. I wasn't as high on him, but now he's going to Yankee Stadium and the AL East. I'm very high on him. So for reference, this was 2022 after he was traded at the trade deadline. You can see he was horrible. 3 home runs and 4 RBI in 26 games at Petco Park after they acquired him for that massive package. So not good. But here are some concerns I have for Soto. A lot of things I said were great. That's all good and dandy. Here is his 2023 spray chart. So 35 home runs. He's really great when he goes the opposite way and to left center field. And you can see a lot of these would not be home runs at Yankee Stadium. So Yankee Stadium is actually going to eat a lot of his power to this area. And if he becomes too pull happy, that's when he's not his best. That's what we've seen in the past. And we can see expected home runs for his career is only 141 at Yankee Stadium because of how deep left center is. Compare that to the Reds ballpark, Great America. It's 196 home runs. So you can see this can actually potentially hurt him, but I think it's going to be fine. I think it'll all average out, especially as he's playing in that division, which is more hitter friendly. On top of that, the Yankee Stadium dimensions are worrisome. Hype might already be baked in right now, especially in the last 6 months. Here are his price movements the last year, 6 months, and the last month, I believe. 90 days, last 3 months. In the last year, he is down 18.7%. So he's still down year over year. The last 6 months, he's up 24.2%. In the last 6 months, he's up 10%. So is it too late? Potentially. Another concern that is big to me is free agency. If he leaves the Yankees, a lot of the value we're baking in right now could be gone. And if he stays with the Yankees, I think there's a chance that he becomes one of the hottest players in baseball card collecting for the next decade. But overall, those are my 3 picks. I actually have been buying Juan Soto this offseason, and I do think there's opportunities with some of his stuff. Make sure you don't buy players' cards just because I like them. That doesn't really mean that they're a good buy. Sometimes I get too caught up in advanced metrics. But overall, I've done great in the past and bad in the past. So we'll see how it goes this year. I'm going to have some more of these videos of players I don't believe in for 2023 and other more under the radar players as well. And other than that, I will see you in the next video.